Hello, and thank you for visiting with us. This is Coffee with Moni and a special guest. And my special guest today is Meredith Harrison, who is a very special friend of mine. And I would like to share with all of you the things that Meredith has done for me that have been so helpful. So, hi, Meredith.
Hi, Moni.
Hey, so Meredith and I live in the same town, but we are not so close to each other. And when we probably have known each other for about 9 years, right? 9 or 10 years.
I
And
think at least that long.
yeah, and it started when we both used to rent space in a healing center in town that used to be called Healing. What was the name?
In Good Hands Healing Center.
I just drew a blank. That's funny. It was called In Good Hands, and about 7 or 8 different practitioners with different techniques were using space here and there. I was teaching my feng shui classes back when I still taught live classes, and Meredith was using the space for the two things she does, which is one is Jinsin Jitsu, and the other one is the Berkal technique. And today we're going to be focusing on the Berkal technique. And Meredith was the gal that had the idea that we should probably all exchange services so that we had a clear idea of what each other served. So like she said, if she knew what a consultation with me was like, then she'd be able to refer me to other people. And if I had some sessions with her, I'd be able to refer people to her. And so we did this with a group of other people, and I did some feng shui for Meredith, and Meredith did Berkal technique sessions for me. So, Meredith, would you explain to us what the Berkal technique is?
The fast way that I explain what the Berkal technique is it's a way of clearing out emotional baggage or any negative belief systems that are limiting you from living your life to the fullest. So that is just anything that's preventing you from being able to do what you want to do, or any emotions from the past that limit you in your present life that prevent you from really, living your optimum, your ideal life the way that you would like to live. And I guess if you're wanting to know beyond that, it's a set of instructions that we give to the unconscious mind to go in and clear out that emotional baggage. And it's a very fast, efficient, easy way of doing so. The client is just asked to take deep breaths throughout the process, and that's to prevent them from shutting down the emotions, since we all have that automatic tendency to try and suppress negative emotions. And really all that's asked of them is to take deep breaths throughout the process and rate the level of emotion on a 0 to 10 scale. It's the same as the pain scale. And it's just like having a conversation. I know people, the second that they hear the word unconscious mind, people are usually giving me strange looks, so I'm used to that. But it's really, it's just like having a conversation, and you don't have to go through all the rehashing of events that conventional therapy asks you to do. And you don't really even have to talk about it that much. We just need to know basic information of what emotion that you're trying to clear or what belief system, and then give that set of instructions, and we can sit and have a conversation while you take deep breaths throughout the process. So it's the fastest thing that I know of, and I think it's the fastest thing that a lot of my clients have said that they've encountered, and they wish they'd encountered it a lot sooner. It would have saved them years of therapy.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is when I have referred you to people and I start telling them about the Berkal technique, and as soon as I mention the unconscious mind, and I know this has happened to you too, that people want to know, wait a minute, is it hypnotherapy what you're doing?
No, not at all. Right? I know people for unconscious. I mean, it's not something that people talk about that often. So people always have strange associations of like a pendulum and hypnosis, or a crystal ball or something. It's nothing like that at all. It's just like having a conversation. And it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because most things trace back to something that was usually triggers back to something that happened in childhood. And it's easy to understand where those emotions would kind of set a seed, because children are so impressionable. So the age period from 0 to 7, you come into the world not knowing how to eat, drink, communicate, walk, talk, any of those things. And you not only learn all those important life skills during that time, but you also learn all your belief systems about the world. So you learn whether the world is a safe place or not, whether you can trust people or not, whether your needs will be met or not, whether you're intelligent or not, attractive or not, and all of those things sort of set the tone of your life in motion.
I remember,
So,
but first, let's go back, because when people hear accessing the unconscious, they're like, well, for somebody else to access my unconscious, I have to be, like in a hypnotic state. So it's not that, right? So the
it's
Berkal
not that.
technique,
No.
actually, you can actually access the unconscious mind, but the person stays conscious the whole time, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that when I heard about it, that really set me at ease, because I know I didn't want to be out of it. I wanted to
Right.
be completely engaged. But the other thing is, and I remember you had mentioned something when we first met, that something that was not a big deal for an adult can be a tragedy for a child. For example, if a little girl loses her favorite teddy, that could be a traumatic event that needs clearing. And we make
Exactly.
life of the child at that moment. It's huge.
Hmm. And that's sort of what I was getting to in my explanation is children experience emotions very intensely. Their world is very black and white, and you don't sort of develop that ability to logicize things away, all the gray areas, until a little later in life, like closer to 7, 8. And so when you experience that emotion so intensely, it is like a big trauma or big crisis to a child. I mean, it can pass quickly and be forgotten, but those emotions, if they're not resolved, can easily be triggered later in life when you have a similar type of event occur and you think, why am I so upset by this? It's not a big deal. And it seems ridiculous at the time, but it's because those previous emotions that haven't been resolved are kind of triggering back in a chain. So that's why when we clear it out chronologically going backwards, you'll often, kind of remember, oh, the seed event must have been this event that happened in childhood. And it seems inconsequential at the time, but then it's kind of interesting to see those patterns. And I always am intrigued to see what clients find out about their own connections in life that they might not have had that light bulb go on until that point.
Yeah, when you talk about events from childhood, there's one that I remember when I was maybe like 4 years old, and I was going to a kindergarten. I was too young to be in kindergarten, but they had sent me anyway. And there was a nun. I had a new doll that I was fascinated with, and the nun asked me if she could borrow the doll over the weekend to so that her niece could play with it. And I said yes, and expecting that I would get it back Monday. And then the days kept passing by, and she wouldn't return it. And I went to her every single day. And so, where's my doll? Where's my doll? And then she took a long time to return it. And when she finally returned it, it was headless.
Oh
And
no.
I was in total shock, that a nun, which is a figure, and when you're a child, going to a Catholic school, they are presented as the guardians of goodness, right? And so
Yes.
I was like, my doll is headless, and she told me you're an insensitive, selfish child. And I
Oh my
remember,
goodness.
that made a very big impact. And I know that later on, and as an adult, I have always felt a little bit like asserting my needs or my desires, or simply speaking up for what is right. It's not right for an adult woman to take a doll of a child and then return it without a head. So
No.
yeah, but so I just remember that, so it's interesting how things, because for the parents that maybe, the dog lost a head, that's all, the doll. But for a child, that can be so humongous. But one thing that, when I first went to see Meredith, and we had done this exchange, and we did, I think, about 12 Berkal technique, and what we focused on the most was things from my childhood and my upbringing and relationship with my nuclear family. And I remember thinking, like in just 12 sessions, how many things were cleared, that I had seen other people go through 5, 10, some of them 12, 15 years of therapy, and not make so much progress in the terms of how things were released and gone for good. The things that impress me about the Berkal technique is that when you have a negative belief or negative emotion and you clear it, it does not come back. It's almost like you just have deleted the program in a computer that could make you have that type of emotion regarding that, right? And so
Yes.
that's, can you tell us a little bit about that? You know, how does the Berkal technique work, that when something is clear, it's clear for good?
Sure. Well, it's a very overused analogy these days, but the analogy that I was taught when training in this area was, it's like clearing out the layers of an onion. So once you clear out a layer, you'll get to the layer underneath, and you'll definitely feel progress all the way along each layer that you clear off, and eventually you'll get to the core, or the main reason that this issue was an issue to begin with. But there can be so many layers of emotion tied into it that you often need to do several rounds of clearing on, say it's sexual abuse that you're working on. You can have, feelings of betrayal, anger, and hurt, and so many different things mixed in there. And so each one that you clear off, you'll notice a difference. But the homework assignment is to always go out, live your life, and notice where your glitches still are. So you take note of what you still need to clear in order to get to your ideal state of functioning, and then come back and continue working until it's gone.
Correctly, it's like you may have to have more than one session for the same issue, but it's working on different aspects of that issue. Like you said,
Right.
in one of them, it could be the sense of betrayal. In another one, it could be a sense of impotence, and another one could be insecurities, resentment. And but when it's clear, right? Because it is
Yes.
accessing the unconscious mind. So when you tap into it and clear it, it's clear. And now that I said tapping, that leads me to my next comment regarding this, because before I experienced the Berkal technique, I had experienced EFT, tapping. And
Mm-hmm.
EFT is really interesting, and it works, where people work with one negative belief or emotion that they identify, and then they start tapping and releasing, and they tap certain points that have to do with acupuncture, and then they tap in their hands. And it takes a long time, a long, long time to release one negative emotion or belief, or maybe because I'm impatient, it seems to me like it's a long time, but you might take 15, 20 minutes to release one thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that impressed me about the Berkal technique in doing this with Meredith is that it clears in batches. So explain us to us, what this clearing in batches means.
Well, in the set of instructions, you're asking to clear in groups. So it's not just one event or emotion that being cleared. It's kind of like, Google search can go in and do hundreds of thousands or billions, and your unconscious mind files by emotion. So you're going into sort of the filing cabinets of your life and clearing by emotion, and it'll clear all of those in groups. Sometimes you can even check in and ask what age you're at if you're curious, and figure out, okay, well, that at that age, this is what I remember, and kind of get glimpses as you're clearing. But it goes pretty quickly. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, and so I think that there's these connections. I think one time you explained it to me like it was like a roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
that you are clearing the things that go along a highway, but then you also get to clear the connecting roads. Do you remember that
Definitely.
metaphor with me one time?
Yeah, because there's not just one way to get somewhere. There's the main roads, or there's the smaller roads, the back roads, and so we try and clear out all of those, all of those peripheral ways that you've gotten to this negative emotion to begin with, and make sure that it's good and clear and not going to affect you anymore.
So, like with your clients, can you tell us some examples of things that you have helped them clear?
Yes, I've worked with a lot of people with just what I would consider everyday problems. So anything to do with anxiety, fears, worries, things that all of us have, guilt, shame, to bigger labels, people that have depression, that can be cleared up actually very quickly. People are put on medication to deal with depression, and sometimes are on it for life, and not everybody wants to be on medication just to function. So depression can actually be dealt with very quickly, because I'd say in about 10 sessions, you can clear out the majority of what's depression is, kind of a flat affect. It's suppressing not only all your body's or your mind's effort to suppress all the negative emotions, but it also suppresses all the positive emotions. So that kind of leaves you in a depressed state. You can usually clear out the majority or a good portion of that in, about 10 sessions, which is very quick if you're working on it, weekly or daily. That can be extremely fast compared to years of therapy or years of medication.
That is really fast. And so so what is the recommended time between sessions?
It's whatever a person is comfortable with and however fast they want to work on it. Usually there can be a little bit of processing time, so it could be, weekly is very typical. But if somebody really, really, really wants to get rid of something or, is only in town for a short time or anything like that, we can do work over the phone as well, clearly, since we're promoting that today. But it's entirely dependent on the client, on the person, and what their level of comfort is. I guess some people find it intense, so you might want a week or two in between a session, but other people see how helpful it is and are more than ready to get rid of something they've been carrying around for years. And so I can see people more regularly depending. And I hadn't really finished all the, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, because I started talking about depression, but, panic attacks, sexual abuse, any of the bigger issues like that as well respond very well.
Yeah, I remember when we had done those 12 sessions, and it was really interesting for me because some of the things that came up were things, not just things that had to me with my own life, but things that could possibly be like carryovers from past lives, or things that were in my inheritance, things that I had inherited from my ancestors. There's an article just now circulating about how scientists have discovered that emotional states can be transferred through DNA. And so some of the things that came up for me were not just things related to things that had happened to me in this lifetime, but things that came from the past, things that happened before conception. So we had done those 12 sessions, and then something happened that was really terrible, which is that there was a mass shooting at my church. I was not. This man decided there was a children's program. This was during the summer of 2008, and it was a children's program. So they were doing a theater presentation instead of a regular service, and the sanctuary was full of children. And this man decided, he saw the announcement in the newspaper, and he went in with a shotgun, and he killed 2 people. He hurt about 9 other people. Before, the grandparents and the parents, 5 guys, 2 of whom were grandparents, they took him down, so he didn't get to do a lot of damage. And I was supposed to be there, like right in the line of fire, but we were late. There was a voice that told me to. My husband had told me to go ahead, and he would meet me there. But this voice told me it's better to be together as a family than to be on time. So I decided to wait for him, and we went together, and we got there 3 minutes after the shooting. And so we were turned away from the parking lot. We didn't get to see this, but a lot of our friends were there. And I remember, because at the moment, right after the shooting happened, they didn't know if it was just one person or it was a team of people doing a hate crime. And so they pretty much sequestered everybody who was in the church for hours, and they took everybody's cell phone. So we knew people had died, but we didn't know who. And we knew that the sanctuary was full of children and things like that. And so in the end, thank goodness, no children were even hurt, which I think in itself was a miracle. But I um, I woke up the next day, and I was in so much emotional pain from the losses and the worry, that I felt, like even like a lot of physical pain in my body. And I had called Meredith to make an appointment, but I couldn't get to her fast enough. And then Meredith said, "Well, we can do it over the phone." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fantastic," because even though we're in the same town, it's a good 45 minutes between our houses. And so I said, and I had little ones, when I think my youngest was maybe 3 years old back then. Um, and so we did a session over the phone, and then we did another session over the phone. And It took 2 sessions to clear this event, which is such a tragic thing. And I know I was not in there. I was not in the center when this happened, but it was still my community. It was still my friends. One friend of mine was killed in the event. It was just such a traumatic thing to happen. And I was unbelievably impressed that it only took 2 sessions to clear this. And so that was, and also that you could do it over the phone, because that makes it. I
It does
used to
have its
say,
advantages. I'm glad that it can be done over the phone as well.
yeah, and I used to say, how lucky am I? Because you're the only practitioner of the Berkal technique in the United States, right?
Yes.
And so I would say, how lucky am I that there's only one practitioner in the whole of the United States, and she happens to live in the same town as me. And then now I don't feel so lucky that way anymore, because anybody all over the world can contact you, right? And you can do it over the phone, you can do it over Skype, or you can do it over a Google Hangout, like we're doing it right now.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so um, tell us a little bit more, like, about the Berkal technique. Like, where did it come from, and how did you learn it? How did you find it? So, where did it come from? How did you find it, and where did you learn it?
Okay. It was invented by Beverly Berkal, Bev Berkal, who lives in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And my family originally being Canadian, I've spent several years in different parts of my life living in Canada. But my mom had gone to her for some other form of therapy. She also does sound therapy, and she's done other things like EFT that you were mentioning earlier. And so my mom had been a client of hers for years, and I think she'd been, trained in all these other therapies, but she found them lacking in some ways because they all had limitations in how they were able to help people, or they seemed to be helping temporarily, but then people would come back in with the same issues later. So it was like it was temporarily helping the issue, but not permanently clearing it away. And so she said that the idea just came to her, and I think my mom was one of her guinea pigs. So she was trying out this new technique as she was developing it, and my mom was very excited about it, and thought that we all had to try it. And at that time, I think I was about 18 or so, and I was really just going because my mom was forcing me to go, and didn't know what I was doing there, and kind of just putting the time in. But I mean, she would have me checking in on the 0 to 10 scale, trying to rate my level of emotion, and I honestly didn't know what number to give her at all. I felt like I was just supposed to give her a lower number so that we could continue with the process, but I didn't know that I was noticing anything per se until finally, I guess, I had a big breakthrough. And I think before that I'd probably been fairly emotionally shut down. Like when she would ask me what I wanted to work on, I didn't know, and I didn't know why I was there. um, uh, and then I guess when I had a big enough thing come up that I was able to clear, it was hugely significant for me and helped me to become a far more open person, and actually be in touch with my emotions. Before, I had been so closed off that I could only tell you what I was thinking about something. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling about it. And she'd say, how are you feeling today? Fine. How are you really doing? And I could just tell her, well, I think this is silly, or I could give her thoughts, but I couldn't really tell her any emotions. And so I guess that having something come up that was a big event for me that I was able to clear out, I guess was life-changing enough that I wanted to be sure I had access to this technique long term in case I ever needed it. So on a selfish level, I wanted to be able to continue to work even if I didn't live in the same city, or if anything ever happened to her. I wanted to still be able to have access to this technique that was so powerful. And I also wanted to be able to share it with other people, because I thought, well, if it's been so life-changing for me, then I'd really like to be able to offer it to others as well. Because it really is the fastest thing I know of in terms of getting rid of something and having it be gone long term. So did I answer all three questions? I forget what they were exactly.
Who made it, right? What brought you to it?
Yeah.
And what you decided to study it?
And so why I decided to study it, yeah, I guess I just touched on that there at the end.
Yeah, and but didn't she have some requirements before she taught you? Didn't she send you to school?
Yeah, she said, well, if you really want to learn this technique, you need to go get back to school and get a degree in psychology. So I did, and took a bunch of psychology classes and did my master's in psychology and trained with her at the same time. And she was writing a book about it at the time, and I know she was so busy with her own clients that she didn't really have time to devote to writing the book properly. So last I knew, I think she was recording chapters at a time and sending it to someone else, and I don't know exactly what's come of the book. If I don't think it's published yet, or I think I would know about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's still fairly small scale in terms of, I think there's a giant pocket of people in Winnipeg that are her clients, and then there are people that are my clients in the US, but in terms of being as global as it might one day be, it's still, I guess, in the earlier stages.
Yes. So you got a master's in psychology, and then she trained you to the Berkal technique. And did she train anybody else since then, or are you still the only person she has trained?
There was one other girl that was training at the same time as me, and I think that she did not complete the training.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of what's happened since. I honestly, we haven't been in touch as much in the recent years as we used to be. But I don't know. Good question. As far as I know, I'm still the only practitioner in the U.S. So.
Would you share your experience of what happened with your second pregnancy, where you were told that you would have to have a C-section, and
Sure.
what you did?
I wasn't expecting that question. Um, I guess, okay. With my second pregnancy, I was told that I was going to have a C-section because I had placenta previa, which meant the placenta was completely covering the opening and would be very dangerous to the baby and me. I could lose a lot of blood if I had a normal delivery. So I had always been very scared of hospitals, I think, based on an experience I'd had at a hospital when I was about 9. But I'd stayed very, very far away from hospitals and wanted nothing to do with a surgery. That was probably my biggest fear in life, was having to have surgery. And so I guess in that scenario, I didn't really have any options. I felt like, okay, I need to come to terms with this, and I am going to have to go through with it. So I did several sessions on myself and finally got to the point where I felt like I had made peace with the idea of having the C-section. And and then I didn't end up having to have one. They said that it would be extremely unlikely for the placenta to move because it was 100% covering, not just partially. And they said that would be very rare for it to move. They hadn't really seen that ever happen. And then very late in the pregnancy, it did end up that I was lucky and it moved. So I guess Moni and I sort of both attributed that to being able to clear that emotionally, and the fear was no longer present. So is
Yeah,
that what you wanted me to share?
the placenta covering the opening, it was a symbol. It was like a physical manifestation of the fear you might be feeling. Also, because you had a very hard delivery with your first baby,
Yes.
and then and so it was like the placenta covering the opening was like the symbolic expression, the physical expression, not so much symbolic, right, of the fear. And when you clear that fear, like the doctors couldn't believe it, the placenta moved completely, and you were able to have a natural delivery, and extremely easy too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fortunately, so glad.
So it's not to say that by clearing things with the Berkal technique, everybody's going to have miraculous happenings in terms of the body. But there's this connection between the things that happen in our body and the emotions and the beliefs that we have. And so it's always worth it when if you're facing something of a physical nature and you're having a lot of strong emotions or fear around it, it's always a good idea to clear those emotions. Now, if as you clear those emotions, the disease clears, that's awesome, but even if it doesn't, just getting rid of those negative emotions or beliefs can be so empowering.
Definitely. I was very grateful.
So I know that you usually do 1 hour sessions, right? And
Yes.
we have a very special deal for people who get to this video for whatever reason. There's going to be a link at the bottom of the YouTube video. And if you're on the email list, I'm also going to send you a link through the list so that you can access this deal. So, how much do you charge usually for a session?
80.
$80, and I have a deal on my blog that people can pick my brain. For people who don't necessarily want to have a full feng shui consultation, but they just want to be able to ask me a question about what color to paint their bedroom or the specific questions they might have about feng shui. I have this service, and people really, really like it. And so I usually charge $60 for the pick Moni's brain session for half an hour, and Meredith charges $80 for a Berkal technique session. And so what we're doing is we're having a joint deal where you can get a half an hour session with Meredith and half an hour session with me for just $99. So that is $80 plus 60, and but you get a deal for just $99. So you will get the link on the Facebook video, and you will also see it if you are on the list. So actually, I'm going to put the links under the Facebook video right now. I said Facebook, right? But it's actually YouTube. Half an hour session with Meredith and half an hour session with me. Sorry about that feedback right there. I'm trying to access the video so I can put it there for people who are watching live. That you can, in the comments. Oh, comments are not allowed yet. So, but I will do that when we finish recording this meeting, and so underneath the description, in the description underneath the YouTube video, you're going to be able to see the link to get this deal, and also to see the link where you can join my Feng Shui for Business list, so you can be invited to future events. What I'm doing is every month I'm inviting a person who has greatly blessed me, who has benefited me with their services and their work, and so that I can share those blessings with other people. Is anything else that you would like to share with us today,
I
Meredith?
don't, I don't think so. I'm just wondering if I've said everything that I had planned on saying. Um, I guess I'd just like to reiterate that it can be used for belief systems or negative emotions, because belief systems can be just as limiting if you have negative self-talk or recurrent negative chatter that you don't want to deal with going on in your head. It can be just as powerful a tool for either of those things.
Yeah, and so also for fears and phobias, right? Like you had a
Definitely, those cleared super fast, and it's
agoraphobia, the fear of being in public spaces and things like that, right?
yeah. I've used it. It clears extremely quickly on children as well, because they don't have a lifetime of experience that you have to work on. It's it's just one session. Oftentimes for a child, it can be a 15-minute session if they have a fear or phobia about something. I've used it on our older daughter, because she was attacked by ants as a 1.5-year-old. She accidentally stepped on an anthill out in our backyard, and she was extremely scared of bugs after that. And you don't want a child to be freaking out every time that they see an insect, which a lot of kids do. So little things like that can just make they're you can deal with them in life. It's not going to be totally incapacitating, but it's nicer to not have to deal with that on any sort of regular basis. So
Sure.
things like that can be. Go
In, the,
ahead.
in half an hour, how many negative emotions or negative beliefs could a person clear?
It depends on how much resistance they have built up over the years, because at the time that you experienced something, if it was super traumatic and you thought at the time, I never want to feel this emotion again, you may have done a really good job of putting up walls, or what we often call blocks or master blocks, that kind of make you not want to go break down those walls and have to deal with the emotion. So if you're extremely resistant to clearing, it might take a little bit longer than somebody who is not as resistant to clearing. But oftentimes, at least one, if not two, in a half-hour session. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that you mentioned something really important, because when people do return therapies or regression therapies, they actually go back to the incident and they revise and relive the incident, and they might not feel the full force of the emotions as when the incident happened, but they might get some of it, right? And
Hmm.
you do not need to do that with the Berkal technique. You don't need to go back to the moment or relive the moment. You just find out that it's there, access it, and clear it.
Hmm. And oftentimes people do experience, some of the emotion, but it clears so quickly that it's just a few minutes, as opposed to carrying around with you for a lifetime and trying not to feel it and using all that mental and mental emotional energy to suppress that from your awareness.
And during a regression or return therapy, people might stay for an hour just trying to release the negative emotions of one incident, right? And so I like that it's easy. I like that it's simple. And I think it's very cost effective compared to anything else you could do, because you clear so much in one session.
I
And
agree wholeheartedly.
what did you say?
I said I agree wholeheartedly, which
Yes,
is
yes.
probably why I went into it.
Yeah. And so thank you so much, Meredith, for joining me on a Sunday afternoon for coffee.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your friendship and this interview.
Likewise, I appreciate your friendship very much. You know that. And so, everybody, when as you, if you are replaying this video or if you are watching it after it aired, there's going to be a link to where you can get the special deal that Meredith and I are offering, which is $99 for a session with her and $99 for a mini consultation, Big Moni's brain session with me. And so we'll see you the next time. Goodbye.